The Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show is sponsored by Accunet Mortgage, an equal housing lender, NMLS ID 255368, and Accunet Realty Advisors, which is a separate company from but still affiliated with Accunet Mortgage.
Putting a roof over your head without the headache. Get answers to all of your home buying questions. This is the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
And our Sunday best to you. Good morning and welcome to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show. I'm Steve Kettler, along with Accunet Mortgage and Accunet Realty Advisors, owner and president Brian Wickert, and licensed millennial loan consultant David Wickert. As always, if you have a question or a comment, you can join us at 414-799-1620 or throughout the Midwest on the Accunet Mortgage toll-free talk line. That number is 1-800-877-1620. So now we are into the world of President-elect Trump. Already you're seeing mortgage interest rates that are shooting up a little bit, and the bond market that kind of getting, what's going on here?
Yeah, and David and I actually have a debate. We're going to carry it out online here, live on the air. Yep. But indeed, when we did our last show, we had last week off. When we did our last show, we said, hey, when we come back, we'll have a new president. Little did we know that interest rates would have jumped up a 0.5% before, the week before the election, we were talking about 3.5 with no points. And now when we do the rate roundup here in a minute, you're going to hear 3.99. We can at least give you that 3 handle on the front. Yeah. But it really is a 0.5% higher here as we finish up the week. I was going to write the headline like, this is the most and fastest rates have gone up ever. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to fact check myself.
You know what, guys? I think we're gonna take a quick little break here and reset some parameters here on our audio link, and that way we'll have a better chance of everybody getting heard here. You're listening to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on 620 WTMJ, and if you have a question, you can reach us at 414-799-1620 or throughout the Midwest on the Accunet Mortgage toll-free talk line. That number is 1-800-877-1620. We'll come right back with David and Brian here on the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on 620 WTMJ.
Getting you into the home of your dreams. Here's more of the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
Get this, students at one Midwestern high school have been told not to bring American flags on campus because they're too controversial. What's going on here? And how's this being received? You can talk about it with Jeff Wagner tomorrow at 12:35 right here on WTMJ. David Wickert is with us. Brian Wickert is with us, and we've been focusing in on where mortgage rates have gone since the election or President-elect Trump has occurred.
Yeah, and they are up roughly 0.5%. To put that in perspective, on a $200,000 30-year fixed-rate loan, we were able to offer 3.5% with no points, so that makes the APR about 3.52 prior to the election. Now they're up to 3.99, and that's with no points. And how much in closing costs?
Just $700 in closing costs.
All right, so we're able to tamp that down. By the way, the national average this week, according to Freddie Mac, which comes out on Thursday and reflects rates from Tuesday, was 3.94, but you'd have to pay 0.5 point to get that, which on a $200,000 loan is an extra $1,000. In addition to normal closing costs, which I'm going to say here in southeastern Wisconsin are probably $1,400 at most lenders, $1,400-$1,500. So let's call it $2,500. We're at 3.99 at the end of the week with just 700 and how many? 16, did you say, or 16?
It's just 700 even.
700 even. All right. What's the APR on that, Dave?
4.01.
All right, and that makes your payment exactly $55 higher per month. All right, so I don't think that's going to stop anybody from buying a house.
No.
But I do think it's going to put the damper on some refis, right? Because, hey, if you were looking to save $1,000 a year, that's $83 a month is $1,000 a year. Well, hey, I just took away $55 of that, or I didn't. The markets did. All right, so now for the debate. So stock prices are up almost 1,000 points. It was like 17,888 on the Dow before the election. Now we're at 18,900 and change or something like that. That's a 6% rise in stock prices. Mortgage rates here in this country are up. Interest rates on U.S. debt. And the 10-year Treasury yield went from what to what, David?
1.8 to 2.35. That's a 30% swing.
If you measure it based on the 1.0. Okay, so interest rates are up a full 0.5% on government debt. And the question is why? And David and I have different views on that because we do. And the great thing is, nobody will know if either one of us is right. All that the market pundits do, Steve, is they just make up their best guess as to why the markets are doing what they're doing. All right, so David, what's your view?
My view is that rates are up because it's a measurement of risk. So when the financial markets woke up on Wednesday after election night, they said, if I'm going to park my money in U.S. debt, I want a little bit more for that risk compared to if I could park my money with the Germans or with the Swiss or with the Japanese.
So you're making you're making the argument that there is all of a sudden now, under a Trump administration and a Republican Congress, a greater default risk on U.S. debt.
I'm just saying when people park money, well, it's the reason why Brazil has to pay 12% to borrow money.
But then explain why Italy is at 1.5.
Okay, well, my nerd out is it's because Italy has a double backstop, both their own ability to tax their citizens to pay back, and also the European Central Bank. They have a double backstop as opposed to the U.S. economy, which is just us.
Oh, okay. So you're saying the European Bank.
Again, I am not an economist,
all right,
but that's my quarterback, my couch quarterbacking.
So that's the more traditional explanation that's been given in the financial press is that, hey, we're going to see infrastructure spending and tax cuts at the same time, which means greater deficit, which means greater demand for U.S. Treasuries. That's interesting. A conflict just went off in my brain. But and inflation is going to come back because we're going to be spending money on bridges and airports and all this other stuff. And so we're going to see interest rates rise because inflation is going to come back, which is what the Fed has been angling for all
But
along.
If you raise $1 trillion in debt, you got to sell that to somebody. And so in order to attract that kind of money, you're saying you're going to have to raise the yield on the debt?
Yeah, okay. Maybe so. Okay. And then the other thing that's true is when people put money into stocks like they have, and they take it out of what? The bond market. So there's just that symbiotic relationship between stocks and bonds. All right, so who knows for sure? But the fact of the matter is, the headline that I saw on CNBC, which is mortgage and home buying panics, is a little overblown.
They're in the headline business.
A little hyperbolic.
Yeah.
They're in the headline business. They want to make it happen. By the way, some of the other times when mortgage rates have moved at least 0.5% in a week's time include back in 2013 when we took the punch bowl away on quantitative easing.
QE.
Yeah, that made interest rates jump up 0.5%. Also, 3 times during 2008, during the financial crisis, rates popped up 0.5% in a week. And here's just another calm down teaser or fact for you. What were rates exactly a year ago? 3.95.
Okay.
Exactly where we were. So it's all okay. This is not going to bring an end to home buying.
Not to pile on, but Janet Yellen also this week made it abundantly clear that they're going to raise rates at their December meeting. And in fact, the odds are 95% that the Fed is going to raise rates at their December meeting. I would take the other side of that just because there's more that can go wrong than the certainty.
Okay, so you're going to be a contrarian on that. I think it's a virtual certainty. By the way, on a 15-year fixed, moving your rate from what was 2.875 before the election to 3.25, which doesn't sound nearly as cool, that changes your payment on a $200,000 loan by $35 a month. So it's going to be okay, folks.
Correct.
Still okay to refinance, to put in that home equity line balance, which is going to go up.
Yeah.
If that 95% forecast is correct. Put them together now before the rates go up or before rates get any higher. When we come back, Steve, let's talk about our top 5 surprises for first-time home buyers when we come back.
Right here on the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on 620 WTMJ.
What? Don't just find a house. Find your home. Here's more of the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
So what members of Green Bay's Walking Wounded will be able to suit up for tonight in Washington? Matt Pauley takes a look at the injury report during Wisconsin Sports Weekend, coming your way at 3:35 this afternoon here on WTMJ. Right now, we're talking with Brian Wickert and David Wickert, the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show here on WTMJ, and looking at some of the top surprises first-time home buyers discover.
Top 5 surprises.
Not just first-time home buyers, by the way.
That's true, but mostly, for sure, first-time home buyers. But this does surprise regular home buyers, or repeat buyers, because people don't buy homes every week or month or even year.
Yep.
Right? I think the average is every 7 years, something like that. All right, my number one surprise is that the appraiser gets a copy of the offer, including the purchase price. Yeah, a lot of first-time home buyers are like, well, what good is that? Well, and the answer is the realtors have a really good lobby. And I am a realtor. Just passed my continuing education every 2-year exam.
Good job by you.
Yeah, I mean, it makes for a smoother system. Number 2 is they're surprised that they don't get to dictate or even participate in how defects get fixed if they've given the seller the right to cure. So this is all about the home inspection.
Yes.
I get home inspection done. The guy finds out that the caulking is bad all around the chimney or the tuck pointing. And, okay, let's decide how we're going to fix that. No. You don't get to decide unless you've written in special language. The standard right to cure in the Wisconsin offer to purchase contract allows the seller to just fix it in a, quote, good and workmanlike manner within 3 days before closing. So if you just go with that, and in a hot market like we've had, especially in the first-time home buyer price range, that's kind of a negotiating point. The sellers want to have the right to cure defects that come up. And so if you've given the seller that right without any modification, you don't get to participate in the cure, David.
When you've observed that in the past, is it written into the contract as, you get a quote, Mr. Seller, I'll get a quote as the buyer, and then, we'll...
Not for the standard language.
No, but I'm saying...
For the proactive?
If you write it in, you agree that, we'll pick one of our 2 quotes or something like that?
Yeah, like when we did it for your house or for Grace and Tim's house when we helped them buy a home, we put in there that seller has the right to cure. However, buyer and seller must agree on the manner of any cure.
Okay.
Otherwise we're Splitsville.
Right.
Okay. So you got to write that in, and you can get as detailed as you want to in terms of we'll get ours, you'll get yours, but then how are you going to decide?
Right.
So by saying you both have to agree on it, that kind of takes care of it. Now, related to that, surprise number 3 is first-time homebuyers are surprised sometimes how much they have to spend to get out of a deal. And the classic example, real-life example that I have is with Tim and Grace, our daughter and son-in-law. We wrote offers on 3 houses. 2 of them failed on the inspection. But just on one of them, the home inspection, which was a bigger house, we had to pay about $500 for it, including the radon test. Then the home inspector said, hey, I think you got some basement wall problems. All right, well, he didn't call it a defect because he's not an expert. Yeah. So we had to call in a structural engineer. $300 later, at a grand total of $800 that we just spent on that one house, we're blowing up the deal. We're giving them we're out of here. Notice a defect.
Because you have to have the actual,
evidence, proof.
Okay.
Yeah, we had to have the structural engineers report that said, this is beyond normal.
Okay.
And couldn't get that from the regular home inspector. So there's
that can add up if you go through 2 or 3 or 4 homes.
Think about it, right? Yeah, $400 or $500 a pop.
That was money I was planning on spending on the down payment.
Yeah, or washer and dryer, whatever. Yeah. Now, related to that same thing, so I've got 3 of them related to the home inspection. Even if you're not declaring defect, you have to give a copy of the reports that you have done. So if I had a structural engineer's report and a home inspection report, I have to give those to the seller.
Okay.
So let's say that I'm getting out of the deal because the appraisal then came in low later. Under the Wisconsin contract, the seller has the right. It's right in there, black and white. Buyer will provide seller with any report or inspection that they've had done during the course of this transaction. So the seller gets this information for free if they want to use it to figure out what they have to fix for the next buyer. Doesn't seem fair, does it, David?
No, but we also don't have to deliver the appraisal.
Unless you're...
unless you're walking away.
Correct. Oh, unless you're declaring that to be a problem.
Got it. Okay.
Right. And then my fifth surprise is that mortgage lenders cannot use that super low income-based payment that you're making on your student loans. And what's the rule on that, David?
It's got to be at least 1% of the outstanding balance, even if it's deferred. I had an example of that this week. It was to say, you have $50,000 in student loans, and right there on the credit report, on the trade line, it said deferred until January of 2017. I said, but I have to pretend like you are already making a payment
of
$500 a month, because we have to make sure that when you do start paying back on that student loan, it doesn't blow up your budget, because it's coming sometime.
Yep. Now, we'll publish that list of 5 biggest surprises for home buyers on our blog. And one other thing about student loans, realize that if you're only making the income-based payment, you're not even covering the interest.
Correct.
And so your loan balance is going up every month. Your interest is clicking along at 5 or 6%. You're only paying $50. That's called negative amortization and has been outlawed. Or not outlawed, but virtually outlawed in mortgage lending, yet we allow it to happen on student loans. All right, when we come back after the news, we're going to talk about a case that we had this very week where a cash buyer decided to subsequently try to get a mortgage, and it freaked everybody out. Should it have been a concern? We'll answer that when we come back.
Right here on the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on 620 WTMJ. It's now 10:30 as we welcome in from the WTMJ 24-hour newsroom, Colleen Bolden.
Thank you, Steve. One man is dead after the car he was riding in took off from a police traffic stop and crashed in Milwaukee. It happened last night near 27th and Capitol. The car crashed into another car and a light pole. 6 other people were hurt. 2 teenagers have been charged with first-degree murder in the deadly shooting of an Illinois congressman's grandson. The 16 and 17-year-olds are both due in court later today. They're suspects in Friday's shooting death of 15-year-old Javon Wilson, the grandson of Representative Danny Davis of Chicago. Police say the shooting stemmed from a fight over basketball shoes. And President-elect Donald Trump has tapped Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions to be his attorney general. Senator Sessions once denied a federal judgeship over alleged comments he made about African Americans. Members of both the Congressional Black Caucus and the Congressional Hispanic Caucus say they're worried about Sessions' record, but Trump's incoming White House Chief of Staff, Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Priebus, disagrees, saying Sessions spent his career fighting for equality, freedom, and opportunity. WTMJ, PellaWI.com, time saver traffic. Travel times look good. 94 inbound. Highway 16 to the Zoo is 11 minutes. The Zoo to the Marquette, 7. 4145 southbound. Highway Q to the Zoo is 15 minutes. 43 inbound, Brown Deer Road to the Marquette will take you about 12. 94 northbound, Layton Avenue to the Marquette is 7. And 894 northbound to Hale to the Zoo, that will take you about 5 minutes. The WTMJ 5-day forecast, mostly sunny today, chilly, a high of 37. Tonight, clear and cold, a low of 23. Monday, sunny, still cool, a high of 40. Tuesday, increasing clouds, a chance of rain, a high of 43. Wednesday, cloudy with rain, a high of 48. And Thursday, for Thanksgiving, mostly cloudy, a high of 44. Right now in Watertown, it's 27 degrees. Grafton, 29. In Milwaukee, it's 31 degrees. Watch today's TMJ4 News for your complete Storm Team forecast. I'm Colleen Boland, News Radio 620 WTMJ.
Expert advice on buying a home. Here's more of the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
Keep in mind, Jimmy John's and Subway are very popular in Wisconsin, but the Badger State has our own local sandwich giant, Cousins Subs. Christine Sprecht has been the CEO of Cousins for a little over a year now after her father stepped down from that role, and he'll talk about the sandwich business and so much more during our WTMJ's Conversations Hour coming up here at 11:07 this morning. So in the midst of starting off with a cash buyer who wants to switch to a mortgage, that seems to have created a little bit of a speed bump.
Angina, heartburn, part of the ages. So here's what happened. On Monday, I got a voicemail from a fellow business owner person that I know. I said, hey, my kids just got an accepted offer on November 12th, okay, to buy a house. I think it's in...
That was last Saturday.
Yeah, a week ago Saturday. And we had to make it a cash offer because it was such a hot price range.
Where was the house?
Somewhere in Brookfield, I think.
Okay.
And kind of one of those older Brookfield Ranch type deals.
Yep.
And I think the purchase price was a little over, I think it was like in the low 200s.
Okay. And
so to make it the most attractive offer, and since the dad, was relatively well-to-do, they made it a cash offer because dad had the money, could afford it. And in fact, he had already proven up. Because that's one of the things. If you write a cash offer on the Wisconsin offer to purchase contract,
show me the money.
Show me the money.
Yes.
What movie is that
Jerry
from?
Maguire.
Okay, there you go, Jerry Maguire. Show me the money.
Yes.
And so he had already proven up that he had the assets to do it. But his call to me was the Monday after. Hey, I'd rather not come up with the 200 and some thousand bucks. Happy to help them with their down payment, but could you help them get a mortgage by November 30th?
Oh man.
Wow.
I thought, I was thinking, how are they really motivated, And
Chief Hero Officer Brian Wickert.
So here's what I said. I said, we will give it the college try.
Yeah.
And we have a new local appraisal management company that we kind of helped launch. We don't really own any part of it, but we were like, could you please start one? Could you please start one? And this appraisal company finally did.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of a big deal to have a legitimate appraisal management company. And we've been getting great service out of them. So I thought, you know what, I can get the appraisal done. And in fact, the appraisal inspection was done this past Friday. Okay, so we should have the report, I'm going to guess, on Monday.
Yeah.
And the buyers are really motivated, so they signed their documents electronically. They uploaded electronically their pay stubs and W-2s and bank statements and everything. So we got a legitimate shot at this. But I said, here's the backup plan. I said, if we don't come through with the financing by November 30th, we will help you put a private loan in place. We will guide you to the... And he's like, what? Why would I need to do that? Aha, here's the reason. Because if there was no loan on the property, and then we come back to finance it 2 weeks after they buy it, that is called a what kind of a refinance, David?
Cash out.
Cash out refinance. And the pricing on a cash out refinance is a lot worse, especially since these people don't have the highest credit scores. They're kind of mid-level. You really get whacked on a cash-out refinance. Now, normally you cannot do a cash-out refinance within 6 months of buying a house, and the exception is if you've paid cash, then you can do it, but you still get whacked with the cash-out financing. So that's our backup plan. Now, the issue was it was a bona fide cash offer, and when I called up the agents, both the buyer's agent and the listing agent, to tell them, hey, this is Brian Wickert from Accunet Mortgage, and we're going to be calling to set up an appraisal. They both freaked out, especially the listing agent. And when we come back from this next break, I'm going to tell you exactly why they shouldn't have when we come back.
Here on the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show on 620 WTMJ.
Helping you find a place to call home. This is the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
And now more on the cash buyer that then wanted to get a mortgage and how that kind of had some folks experiencing quite a bit of anxiety.
Clutching their chests, renting their garments, as they say in the Bible. Okay, so when I talked to the listing agent, she was very upset. Like, what do you mean this is a cash offer? I said, well, let's call her Becky. That's not her real name. I said, I'm looking right at the offer to purchase, and it says that the buyer may or may not obtain mortgage financing. This is under the heading, if this offer is not contingent on financing. And by the way, the offer was also not contingent on an appraisal. So a very clean offer, very attractive.
Yeah.
So it says right in this paragraph, buyer may or may not obtain mortgage financing but does not need the protection of financing contingency. Seller agrees to allow buyer's appraiser access to the property for purposes of an appraisal. Buyer understands and
Well, apparently we have lost our connection with Brian and David, so we'll take a real brief pause here on the Accunet Mortgage and Realty show and reconnect and figure out how this story ended up when you have a situation with a cash buyer that wants to switch to a mortgage. Brian?
Through the home buying process. Welcome back to the Accunet Mortgage and Realty Show with Brian Wickert on 620 WTMJ.
Okay, so we had a situation where a cash buyer suddenly wanted to get a mortgage, and that caused some folks on the, I guess, the seller side of the arrangement to kind of freak out a little bit. But when you look at the contract that was signed, Brian, it really shouldn't have created as much anxiety.
Exactly. And so I try to encourage this listing agent to, please read the contract and present this, change of plans or addition to plans to the seller in a calm, cool, and collected manner to say this doesn't change anything. It is still a cash offer. There's no financing. There's no appraisal contingency. They're just going to try to finance. And I explained, hey, the dad would rather only help with a $40,000 down payment assistance to his daughter and son-in-law rather than the whole $200,000. And doesn't that make sense? She admitted it made sense. So hopefully she presented that in an okay manner. We'll give you an update on that one next week. Hey, speaking of updates, you might recall we were telling the situation on a second home up in northwestern Wisconsin where we started that loan in August. The first appraisal came back the middle September. We were trying to get it. We didn't actually receive it. It was stuck in quality control because it was a lousy appraisal. We ended up having to put that one in the trash can, ordered a new appraisal the end of September, supposed to be back to us just 6 weeks later, November 9th. Still hadn't got it. The buyer was freaking out, even though they had pushed their closing date back to December 2nd. And that is all turning out just fine. We did get the appraisal back. By the way, Jason Hansen, my very clever head of operations, did email the appraisal company and said, this is taking longer than the gestation period for a leopard.
There you go.
So you can either make an appraisal in northwestern Wisconsin or a leopard from scratch in the same amount of time. All right, so we got a lot of time left here before the end of the show, which is great because now I want to turn our attention to a Florida condo situation, and this involves one of our very own senior managers, great guy, been with the company a long time. We started to talk about this a few weeks ago. I know we mentioned it on the show at one point, whereby he bought this condo at the bottom of the market, and it's in Naples, and it's right on the seashore. Now, it's an older building, probably built in the 60s by my guess from when I saw it. I'm going to say there's between 70 and 80 units, just 2 stories tall. And so a couple of years ago, I'm going to say 2 years ago, they get a new owner who used to be a manager, a commercial banker, like a VP or something, or senior VP of commercial lending somewhere. And he takes over as the association president, goes, I don't know, I don't think we have enough reserves, because we don't have hardly any reserves at all.
Okay.
And so he starts down this path of evaluating this building, and this is called a reserve study. So you can hire an outside firm to do a reserve study, and when you do that, what you're trying to do is gauge when are the major building components, roof, walls, pool in this case, driveway, what are all those components? When are they going to be at the end of their useful life, and we got to pay to redo them? So they bring in a structural engineer, and I don't know how they figured this out, but they go, oh, you know what? All the steel beams inside that you can't see, we think they're rusting from all the salt air.
Oh, great.
Okay, so they start to figure that out. And what's the bill to fix this? Are you ready? $1.1 million.
A cool 1.1.
A cool 1.1 million, but it doesn't stop there. They go about to, and by the way, so that results in our buddy John getting a special assessment for just $12,000. They have one of the smaller 2-bedroom, 2-bath units. So here, hey, pay up $12,000 right now towards this, $1 million project. Well, then as they start to do the project, they find other problems like,
of course,
hey, in Betty's unit, under that windowsill, they have these big picture windows that kind of look out to the ocean. They used 1 by 1 something or another's. And those are kind of falling apart. So we have to take out the window, put in new supports underneath that windowsill. And so, Betty, that'll be another $12,000 for you.
Oh,
boom! And so then guess what you get? Of the 80 unit holders, those who have to pay for the special window assessment, they go, well, I called Home Depot, and Home Depot can do it for $2,000, right? So then there's this whole brouhaha over whether the firm that they've hired to do all this stuff is really charging the right amount. Well, so they go through that whole route and find out, no, after you factor in the special size of the window and the blah, 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 it's really $8,000 at Home Depot, not $2,000, and then it's $4,000 for the labor, so it's really the same. Okay, so this is all, so the total bill, by the way, $1.5 million. Not 1.1.
So you get hit with the first assessment, hey, we think it's going to be 1.1, write a check, and then they say, oh, actually 1.5, I'm going to need a second check, please.
Right. You got to do your homework, folks, because John has been in the mortgage business a long time.
Yep.
And when he bought this place at the bottom of the market, which is probably 2008 or 9 or something like that, 6 years ago, I mean, this is just natural human behavior. You assume the people that have been part of this association have been doing a good job all these years.
Yes.
But that's not necessarily, the case.
Well, the way I describe it to home buyers is you're joining a family. You are joining a condo family, and you need to know if the family is healthy. Because you're going to have crazy Uncle Joe on the association board, and you got to know, has the association been socking away for things in the future, like a new roof or sea salt damaged bars on the inside of the walls, like you said.
And that's the most dangerous because you can't see it. Hey, right. Steve, just a question for you. Do we need to take any more breaks, or are we good up until the end of the show?
We can go all the way to 58:30.
Oh, my gosh, I love it. Okay. So that's the condo cautionary tale that,
But, Dad, I thought condos are less expensive. Isn't that
no, they're maintenance-free.
Oh, yeah, maintenance-free. Yes. I don't have to mow the lawn. I just have to write big checks when we put in a new elevator or something.
And what, the danger is, of course, if you're stretched, if you're the new first-time home buyer or the retiree who could barely afford that condo and you spent every nickel for your down payment, because you really wanted to get the lowest monthly payment you could in your retirement. And now all of a sudden you're slapped with that. That could be devastating.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was telling the story to my wife, David's mother, Becky, and she said, well, what would happen if you couldn't pay? And I said, well, it becomes a lien, like a second mortgage, against your home. And then, oh, by the way, all the other homeowners would have to somehow chip in, right, either through monthly an increase to pay for anybody who's delinquent.
That sounds awkward.
Yeah. And I think they get to publish your name, in the newsletter that says, oh, yeah, and Betty down there in Unit 204 is delinquent on her pitchforks and flames and torches and like that. All right. So another couple of interesting things this week. I got a call from a Chicago police officer who was referred to us by another police officer. We've done a lot of loans for Chicago police officers. And by the way, I was particularly heartened because the past customer, let's call him Matt, who introduced us to Elizabeth, we couldn't do his loan earlier this year. In 2016, we were trying to help him buy another home without selling his previous home. And because of the nature of his compensation, he had some elements to his police officer compensation, like hazardous duty pay was one big chunk, I remember. And the police force would not verify that was likely to continue. Okay? Hey, you got your base salary, I can verify that's likely to continue.
Right.
Your overtime, you got a 2-year track record of that, so that's cool. But would they verify that his hazardous duty pay was...
It depends if there are hazardous events that he has to be at.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we couldn't use that income, and we had to deny his pre-approval request. So despite that, he recommended us to his fellow officer.
Okay.
And which is great, because you know what? We treat everybody, even if we can't help them, we try to help them understand why, and we succeeded in that case. All right. So the question that she had for me was, hey, I'm getting divorced, and I want to either do a major remodeling on my one-story brick ranch home here in the Chicago area, or maybe I need to sell it and buy a new home. So my first question, I'm sure you'd have asked the same thing, David, is, well, what do you think you could sell your home for now? The answer she gave me was like $305,000.
Okay.
And what do you owe? $275,000. So it didn't take me long to figure out, Elizabeth, I'm afraid you don't have enough equity in your home to finance a remodel. And especially if you're going up, a lot of lenders won't give you a remodeling loan based on the future value of the home. Plus, the sad fact is, she's probably would have had to spend, I'm just going to say $100,000 to add a second story to her home, and she's not going to get that value. When you spend $100,000, I don't care what you spend it on, you're not going to get the value of the cost to remodel. So she just plain did not have the equity to do that maneuver. And so we quickly came to the conclusion, hey, you're going to have to sell your home. Maybe that's a good thing anyway, but then you're going to have some money. And, David, you were working on our pre-approval. We can do as little as 3.5% down because she is not a first-time home buyer, and she makes too much money to qualify for the special program that we have. So she's going to have to come up with a 5% down. All right, so to wrap up, we've got mortgage rates on the rise, but don't panic. There's still room for people to refinance. Not everybody that could. If your interest rate is 4.5 or higher, there's still time for you to refinance before the Fed raises rates in December. And it's an awesome time of year, believe it or not, to buy a home. I think we're back here next week at the same bat time and same bat channel. Steve, we'll see you then.
You got it. Straight ahead here, Colleen Boland joins us from the WTMJ 24-hour newsroom.
The preceding was a paid program. Advice and opinions expressed during the Accunet Mortgage and Realty show are solely that of the hosts or guests of Accunet Mortgage and Accunet Realty Advisors and not WTMJ Radio or Scripps Media Incorporated.